Hey there, subscribe to my channel, and also press this bell icon so you never miss any new updates, cause whenever we upload new video you will get a notification on your phone.
Listen to Martin, Maria and Farouk discussing some project work. Then answer questions 1 to 7. Hi Martin, hi Maria. How are you getting on with your project? You've got to give the seminar on Friday, haven't you?
Hi Farouk, we're getting on fine. It's just so interesting. Do you want to hear about it?
Well, I've got 10 minutes before my next lecture, so why not? Let's hear it.
Great. And it'll help us to sort out who said what, won't it, Martin?
That's right. You know, what we've been looking at is research done by a number of psychologists from different parts of the world on intelligence quotients, how they've been rising over the last 50 years.
Really?
Yes. Some psychologists have measured increases in intelligence of up to 25 points in one generation.
Amazing. What's causing us all to get cleverer?
There's a political scientist from New Zealand called James Flynn. Well, he's a pioneer in this field, and he's found that people perform the visuospatial tasks in intelligence tests much better than they did 50 years ago. Partly he puts this down to people playing with their PCs and watching TV, things like that.
What about diet? Does that have anything to do with it?
Perhaps. Robert Howard, a Sydney psychologist, thinks that it does. Just as eating better has made children taller, their average intelligence has also risen. He also says that parents are having fewer children, so they're able to pay more attention to them when they're small. It's fairly clear that stimulation in childhood has a positive effect on kids' intelligence.
IQ tests have verbal and numerical elements too. Have these also been improving?
Yes, but only moderately. It's the visuospatial element which has made the big difference, and Flynn also suggests that modern activities like driving may play a part in this.
There's a British researcher, John Rust, who has made the general point that modern life is much more complicated than it was 50 years ago. Our intelligence has had to develop in order to cope with it all.
Remember also that far more children have the opportunity to go to school nowadays. Howard thinks that must be a leading factor in improved IQ test performance.
Well, yes, that would seem fairly obvious.
To come back to John Rust, he suggests that as science and knowledge develop, ideas become more complex. Well, the people who produce these ideas, the Einsteins and Hawkings, are obviously highly intelligent people, but, he says, ordinary people's intelligence has also had to develop to cope with his new theories.
Before they continue their discussion, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen to the second part of the discussion and answer questions 8 to 10. Are there any limits to intelligence, or will the human race just continue to get cleverer and cleverer?
Well, actually, research in some Western industrialized countries such as Australia and some European countries suggests that intelligence rose quite steeply for 2 or 3 decades and then leveled off a few years ago. Some pessimists think that quite soon we may see it beginning to dip. In some countries, students seem to be less motivated than before. In that sense, there may well be a limit to intelligence.
On the other hand, this rise in intelligence started to happen some years later in East Asian countries, the so-called Asian tigers, and it still hasn't levelled off.
Is higher intelligence what has caused exam results to improve here in Britain, do you think?
Well, that's rather a political question, so it depends who you ask. But you must remember that 30 years ago, only about 5% of school leavers here went on to university. But there's been a vast expansion of the university system, and nowadays about 30% of young people get a higher education. So I guess exams must have been getting easier for all those people to get in.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a podcast on Canberra's theme park. Now you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 16.
Welcome to Canberra's Park podcast. In the next few minutes, I'll tell you a little about the park and the amazing things we have to offer. We like to think that Canberra's offers more than other theme parks. Like them, we have a variety of exciting rides for people of all ages, but Canberra's also places strong emphasis on the educational experience for its visitors. Not boring facts, but lots of interactive exhibits. Although it's mainly an outdoor experience, we do have some indoor activities if the weather gets too dreadful. The park's got a lovely, well-established feel, set in 80 acres of beautiful countryside, about 3 miles south of the tourist resort of Dulchester. The park was set up in 1997 by the Canberra family, but then taken over by new owners in 2004, who have maintained the original vision of the Canberras. It has lots of old trees, hundreds of flower beds, and a gorgeous lake. Canberra's has over 45 different rides, exhibits and arcades. All but one of these is free once you've paid your entrance fee. We charge a small fee for our newest ride to reduce the length of the queues. You don't pay anything for parking. A family ticket for a family of 4 works out at about £8 per person, which is amazing value. Full details of current prices are shown on our website, along with full details of rides, etc., and directions for getting to us. We also have a number of special offers. For example, if you live locally, why not join our Adventurers Club, which entitles you to 50% off ticket prices all year round, and a special lane for all rides and exhibits, which means you don't have to wait to get into any part of the park. See the Offers tab on the website. We've recently added a number of new exhibits to the park, and we're particularly proud of our Future Farm Zone, which houses over 20 different species of animals, from chipmunks to dairy cows. The emphasis is on getting near to the animals. All of them can be petted, and you can buy food for feeding the animals. Many of our younger visitors say that this is the high point of their visit. And speaking of food, don't let the animals have all the fun. We have a total of 7 different catering outlets on the site. We're open 10 to 5:30 all year round, and cold drinks and snacks can be bought at any time during opening hours. And hot food is available most of the day in the Hungry Horse Cafe from 11 until 5. Just half an hour before closing time.
Now you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Now we want all our visitors to have an exciting time when they come to the park, but our first priority must be safety. Parents and guardians know their children's behaviour and capabilities, but here at the park we have set certain conditions for each of the rides to ensure that all visitors get the maximum enjoyment out of the experience and feel secure at all times. There are 4 major rides at the park. Our newest ride is the River Adventure, which is designed to reproduce the experience of whitewater rafting. No amount of protective clothing would make any difference, so only go on this ride if you're prepared to get wet. Children under 8 can go on this ride, but all under 16s must have an adult with them. Not all of our rides are designed for thrills and spills. Our Jungle Gym roller coaster is a gentler version of the classic Loop-the-Loop, specially created for whole family enjoyment, from the smallest children to elderly grandparents, suitable for all levels of disability and health conditions. Carriages have comfortable seating for up to 8 people with safety belts for each passenger, which must be worn at all times. Sit back and enjoy the scenery. One of the best established and most popular of Canberra's rides is the massive swoop slide. Whiz down the polished vertical slide 9 meters in height and scream to your heart's content. There are no age or height restrictions. Be careful though, you must have on long trousers so you won't get any speed burns. And then there's the famous Zip Go-Kart Stadium with 16 karts, 8 for single drivers and 8 for kids preferring to ride along with mum, dad or carer. Take part in high-speed races in our specially designed Formula 1 style karts, but no bumping other karts, please. All riders must be above 1.2 meters because they have to be able to reach the pedals, even in the shared karts. Full details of all safety features are available on our website at www.camberspark.com. So come and make a day of it at Canberra's theme park.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between an academic advisor and a student asking for information about a particular subject that she wants to study. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26. Come in and take a seat.
Thank you.
Now, you've made an appointment to see me with regard to one of the papers you want to enrol in next semester.
Yes, that's right. It's the Globalization and Educational Change paper, GEC 692.
Ah, well, I know the one you mean, but all the code numbers are going to change next semester, so although the course name will stay the same, the code will be ED995. Not that you have to worry about that.
But the content will be the same, right?
Oh, yes, to a large extent. The objectives are still to provide you with the skills and knowledge for analysing the challenges that globalisation poses for education.
Yes, that's what I'm really interested in. The future of education. Not where we are now, but where we're heading?
Well, you'll most likely enjoy the course because it'll give you the opportunity not just to explore, but also to document the advancement of new educational developments.
And there'll be quite a lot of analysis involved.
Yes, obviously. But once you've examined how education has been affected by cultural values and socio-economic structures, you'll go on to debate the pros and cons of the restructuring of public education in view of rapid globalization.
I see, but when you say public education, do you mean worldwide?
No. That would be far too large an undertaking for just one paper. You'd probably choose to work with the education system within your own state or country.
Sounds interesting, but isn't it a bit restrictive?
Not at all. From there, you'd move on to explore the impact of internationalization on curriculum diversity in both developing and developed countries. Have you had a chance to look at the assessment criteria yet?
Actually, I have. And it makes me a bit nervous just thinking about it.
Why's that?
Well, I see that the first assignment starts with an illustrated PowerPoint presentation to the rest of the class. I've never done one before.
No need to worry. You can get help with that. Anyway, this presentation isn't graded. It's what we call a formative assessment. The feedback you get will help you to finalise the written review.
That's a review of those academic articles in the first part of the reading list, right?
Yes, but you only have to choose 5 of them. That first assignment is worth 30%.
And the second assignment?
There are 2 parts to that also, and both are graded. 20 marks will go towards your participation in a seminar, and then there's a 5,000-word essay, which will be graded out of 50.
Thanks.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Yes. The reading list is quite long. Where do you think I should start?
Well, I'd suggest you leave the articles until the semester is underway, but a good preparation would be to look at some of the major texts. These ones here.
In any particular order?
You could start with this one by Tower, here at the bottom of the page.
Sorry, who?
Tower. Tower. 2007. Comparative Education. That should give you a good basis. Then move on to Eliot. Educational Issues of the New Millennium. But be sure to get the 2008 edition, not the original 1998 edition, because so much has changed since 1998. The new edition has extensive revisions and a lot of new material.
OK, so that's Tower first, then Eliot. I think I could handle a couple more over the summer break.
Well, in that case, look for Brown's Education and Globalization, published in 2009. Actually, there are quite a few books by Brown, but I'd start with that one and leave his others till much later. And I'd also really recommend this one here, Globalization and Knowledge Policy by York, published quite recently in fact, 2010. That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
You will hear part of a lecture on cities of the future. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 31 to 37.
OK, we've been looking at how societies will develop in the future and at the increase in the size of cities. So I want to talk to you today about the key considerations in these cities of the future. There are 3 key elements I want to look at, and these are the new features they will have, issues of size, and the main problems to be considered. First of all, individual transportation will be a big factor in these new megacities as public transport becomes unmanageable. There'll be a huge rise in the use of segways, which are personal transporters like motorized scooters. As a result, and partly also to reduce pollution, roads will be altered so that they are narrower and will take up less of a city's space than they do currently. Naturally, this is a major change to the infrastructure, and something that may hinder it is the huge amount of investment it will require. The next thing is, what is going to happen to the commercial areas? We do not want these to become even larger concrete jungles than they are at present, so we have to look at design. And current designs for city development include building gardens on the roofs of these buildings to make a more pleasant environment for workers. And you may think that these areas will expand to cope with increased commercial activity. In fact, the prediction is that they will cover 1/5 of the area that they do at present as we build upwards. The exception to this is shopping centres, which we predict will expand with more and more temperature-controlled malls. What may cause difficulties is that the superstores will be confined to the outer edges of the city, as they will be too big to fit into the new malls. Then, of course, there are the residential areas, and these will undergo their own changes. One particular development will be houses which are built from glass, as innovations in this material allow it to provide light without causing problems with temperature inside a building. The residential areas will not be allowed to expand without limit, as happens in some areas at present, and their size will be restricted to a population of 15,000. One issue, which has yet to be resolved, and I'm not sure it ever will be, is how we manage to house older residents. They will be increasing in numbers as time goes on. Finally, how will these cities live? We know we have limited energy sources, so what will we do? Well, something currently in development, which will be a feature, is that waste is going to become an energy source. For example, to provide gas in homes. Also, as new technology and systems are developed, we will find that energy plants will become smaller. Another energy source we could use, but one which raises issues of having enough space and too much noise, is wind farms. Because of the problems, I'm not convinced these will be the grand solution to our energy problems that we thought they were going to be.
You now have 15 seconds to read questions 38 to 40.
Now, moving on to looking at the social aspect of cities, we need to look at housing and how people will live. Cities currently have flats in the centre, populated by single people and wealthier residents, and families tend to move to the outskirts. In the future, the centre of cities will see a dramatic change. We will see many more examples of cooperative buildings. This is where people join together to form a company that owns the building they live in. And despite continuing shortages, there will also be a rise in the provision of retirement homes in city centres, so that the elderly can have easy access to hospitals and shops. Recently, we have seen a levelling off in the growth of private housing, and I think that will not change. But we are likely to see more social housing, as far fewer people will be able to afford to own their own homes. OK, now, if anybody has any...